Hey folks. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about this neat tool that I use often. If you like doing creative visual type stuff that could really benefit from it, I'm going to be using like this little edit project that I've been working on for a little bit to show like what I use the type of stuff that I use it for. So there is this nice little neat shader pack from this person or TDRR from I think it was the Zandronum forums. It's a little like water shader that is supposed to mimic the aesthetic of the Super Mario Galaxy water effect. Show you it's just this little monochrome texture here. Well, it's like basically two instances of this texture kind of layered on top of one another, scrolling at different speeds, and like the highlights kind of blend in such a way that gives it kind of like a specular-y kind of wavy look. I'll just go ahead and show what it looks like without any alteration. Yeah. So yeah, it's uh, it's it's kind of hard to tell that like it's. I mean, you might be able to if you really focus, but like yeah, like the two instances of this texture are scrolling past one another, and like where the highlights overlap, kind of make this neat effect. Um, but one thing that I wanted to change about it. Well, there's a few things that I wanted to change about it. One thing was the color. I wanted to make it like darker so that it kind of matched um, the aesthetic of the like original Doom Water a little bit more, and I also wanted to replace this if else chain here, because right now there's basically these four like shade levels. Like you've got like the full like white for like the specular highlights. It's not real specular highlights, but it's that's what it's supposed to look like. You've got like this really bright blue, and then you've got slightly darker blue, and then the darkest blue. But the downside of this is if I want to add another level, then that means I've got to add another condition in this if else chain, and then so on and so forth, or however many levels that I want to add. And then on top of that, if I want to like tweak it and experiment, then I have to like go in and keep track of all these magic constants, whatever. And but still, it's just going to be crazy with all these magic constants floating around, and it just I'd rather not deal with it. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to basically plot these points and then create a curve that passed through all of these points. Instead of the color being determined by, this if else branch, it would be determined by where the brightness or whatever falls on that curve. That texture is monochrome, so we're basically just taking the red component here, which we expect to be the same as all the others, and so it's basically just the brightness. That's what I meant by that. But here's what I had come up with originally on that front. So I'm going to use this as an example. This point right here, 0.71, that corresponds to this right here. So if the brightness is greater than 0.7, then this is the color that we're going to return, and that 1 is referring to the blue component right there. And then you can see also we've got this point here, which is 0.7 and then 0.9. So if the red is, or if the brightness is greater than 0.7, then the green is going to be 0.9. And then finally over here we've got 0.7 and 0.4. And then yeah, if the brightness is greater than 0.7, then the red is going to be 0.4. And with this, I know that this one's a bit far off. The point on the curve is a little bit far off from this one, and this is kind of a concession that I made as I was developing this before. Because of how drastically different the red points were from the other two sets of points, I had an entirely different curve altogether, but I didn't like having to like maintain two different curves while I was tweaking and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to use the same exact curve for all of these, and just tweak the values in such a way that kind of fits the best that I can make this curve fits, just because like it was more convenient to just work with a single curve. And then the other curve that I had that I'll also talk a little bit about um, is this one over here, which I created to give a little bit more um, like a little bit more distortion to the water texture, because right now there isn't any distortion. The thing that sort of gives like the watery look is basically just like when different parts of that texture overlap with one another, it kind of gives off the impression that they're kind of blending together. Like there's like waves that are like little ripples or whatever that are like constructively and destructively interfering and stuff like that. It kind of gives off that impression, but I wanted a little bit more, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm not quite sure how to describe what I'm trying to describe, but I at least had an idea in mind, a rough idea in mind of what I wanted to happen. And I think I'll just like sort of go through my steps here because like each one of these is kind of like an incremental like step. So okay, so first off, I have my my texture space, my UV space. So at the bottom left corner is coordinate 0, 0. At the top right corner, it's coordinate 1, 1. And what I wanted to do was basically say, I wanted to, okay, so I wanted to make it look like in certain parts of the texture that that the water was getting closer to, like imagine if you are like just standing on the water, looking completely down, facing toward the water. If there's like waves rippling by, like large waves rippling by, as the wave comes in, as the peak gets closer to your line of sight, you'll start to see the top of the wave like getting closer. So you'll see like the water getting closer to your face, and then as the wave passes, it gets further away. And so what I wanted to do is I basically wanted to start out by creating a curve that would make it so the closer that a texture coordinate was to the center of the texture, the closer that it would appear to the viewer, I guess. My first kind of step was I was like, okay, well, what kind of curve could I start with to sort of get me close? Hold on, let me take a moment to collect my thoughts here. If I think about something getting more intense as it approaches, I tend to think of like an exponential curve, I guess. And so, I might say, okay, you know what? Let me just see what x squared looks like. Okay, that does something kind of cool. It does get more intense, but it's it it crosses this line at 1. And what I want it to do is I want it to cross this line at 0. 0.5, because like basically when it crosses this line, um, I want it to in a sense start going back down. If we can find a curve that kind of like starts at 0 and then sort of grows in intensity until we hit 0. 0.5. That's the center of the texture. Then I feel like we will have a better reference frame to do other things. Maybe I'm just sort of trying to establish like my symmetry. Maybe that's what I'm trying to do at this point. But anyway, okay. So yeah, I got this curve that kind of looks interesting, and I'm like, you know what? Um, one of the most natural things that you can do from this point is just to see what happens as you add different like coefficients in. Since we're at 1 right now, the most natural thing that comes to my mind is to just say, you know what does 2 look like? Oh wow, 2 is actually perfect. That starts at 0, and we have like this gradual incline as we get closer and closer to the middle of the texture. I almost want to say as we get closer to the center, we get closer to the center, but I know that doesn't make sense. It's redundant. Um, Let me think of a better way of putting it. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to find a better way of putting it. But the effect that I want this to have is that maybe I can just like draw it. So there's our like texture or whatever. I want the pixels that are closer to the middle to be wider as we go closer and closer to the edges. Then they kind of taper off until they reach the very end, where they are exactly what they would be. The very leftmost column of pixels will be exactly the same as they would as if they weren't, if they weren't being mapped along this curve. And then same thing with the bottom and the right and the top. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do with that curve. Um, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I've got this nice curve that kind of does that. It starts off to where the very edge maps to itself, and then we start off real slow, and then we get more intense the further or the closer that we get to the middle, which is 0.5. Because yeah, remember 0, 0 is the bottom left texture coordinate, and then 1, 1 is the top right, and then 0.5, 0.5 is the middle. The next thing is, okay, so I've got this point that crosses, or I've got this curve that crosses at this point that I want. This is like where it's most intense. After that, I want it to like, to start like tapering back off. You know, uh, like I basically want it to do this, but in reverse. At this point, I would just basically start just sort of seeing what different operations would do. Here's like one kind of observation that that like I'll sort of remind myself. In some sense, I want to flip this curve. So if I take the additive inverse of it, we can see that I've flipped it across the x-axis. But that's not what I want. So instead of inverting the y, let's try inverting the x, which in this case, is just is L. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, yeah, it looks exactly the same because x squared is equal to negative x squared. But there's something else that I can try. I can try augmenting this x value. So let's just try and add something and see what that looks like. Oh, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll just subtract this instead of add it. That might bring that over there. And yes, it does. Then I keep going. I have this kind of pattern that I really really wanted. I start off 0 0, and then I start off slow, and then I get more and more intense as I approach the middle of the texture. And then the moment that I get past the middle coordinate, I start tapering back off. Once we get to 1, sort of the same thing as before. But here's the thing. What I don't want is for us to get to 0.5 and then suddenly just start dropping off. I want it to be smoother. I don't know how to. Oh my gosh, I gotta find the right words here. I want it to smooth out. Like I don't want there to be some abrupt like basically like singularity, I guess, where it looks like the texture is being like stretched into this like one point in the middle. I want it to kind of get intense here, stretch, and then kind of gradually flow over the middle of the texture and then back to the other edge. So I can start experimenting with different ways how to get that effect. So yeah, let's just see what K plus J looks like. Oh boy, where? Oh yeah, okay, that's something. That's not particularly useful for what I'm saying, but what I'm intending. But yeah, that's something. Let's see what. Oh yeah, that's we're not going in the right direction there. That's not great. Okay, well. Um, I mean, we could always try multiplying. Oh, wait a sec. This is almost perfect. Look at that. So we start off at 0 0, and then we start off slow, and then we get more intense, and then we have this nice gradual crest here before we start tapering back off to the other side. That is almost perfect. I just need it to pass through 0.5. But um, you'll notice that the y component here, if I can get my mouse directly on it, if not, oh well. But you can kind of see that the y at this exact spot is 0.25. So 0.25 times 2 is 0.5. So we could see what it looks like if we just multiply this entire term by 2. Oh, and look at that. That's exactly what we want. And we get a little intensity bonus here. That should enhance the effect even further. Um, because after this point it'll be like the values beyond this point will be even closer to 0.5 than they would have been had we not been mapping this against that curve. So that's also a nice little side effect that we have. So yeah, I'll go ahead and put that on there. Cool. But at this point, I think I realized, because I'm pretty sure that I tested it at this point. I was like, "Wow, I finally found it. This is the look that I'm looking for." As we get closer to the middle, we get more intense. Those pixels are gonna kind of seem to stretch toward the middle, and then we're gonna taper off again. And then I tested it, and I didn't even before. I was so excited that I didn't even think about it before I like jumped into testing it. I didn't think about the fact that, wait a second, hold the phone.